Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Moosecast. Today, we are talking about our favorite book to movie adaptations. Woo! With us today on the Northwestern Moosecast, we have Miss Katrina Heffley and Miss Charlotte Benson. Now, of course, my name is Andrew Wetmore, and we are very excited to talk about, well, our favorite page turners that became movies for better or for worse. So, we'll start with Katrina. All right, to kick us off, what's your favorite book to movie adaptation?
One of mine is Paper Towns by John Green. I read the book, and it did bring me to tears. And when I watched the movie, it also brought me to tears. But between the book and the movie, there were definitely some things that were left out or added. So I have an article that brings a couple things to light about what was different. So in the book, the two main characters, Margot and Quentin, went to SeaWorld. But in the movie, it was never mentioned. And I noticed that when I was watching the movie. I was like, this was not, it didn't follow the exact storyline of the book. Another one was the detective. They actually met her in the book, but in the movie, they mentioned her, but you didn't actually get to see that interaction between the two characters, which I thought was a little weird as to why they wouldn't put her in the movie with that huge scene.
Well, I mean, it happens often. A lot of times they have to cut scenes for either continuity or just to make the film flow better. A book, you have a lot more leeway
Yeah.
for character development, and depending on the budget of the film and how long they're able to make it. Sometimes it's 90 minutes. You have to nip and tuck. Talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about the plot of it, because not everyone has seen it or read it. Spoilers. There may be spoilers in this episode. Go ahead.
So Paper Towns is about a boy named Quentin who goes on this long road trip to find a girl named Margot. She would leave these clues as to where she might be, and he has to find how to get to her. And so it's basically, I see it as almost like a romantic book and movie, because he's trying to find her, and I think, if I remember correctly, there is a little bit of a love connection between the two of them. So, and that's the kind of genre that I tend to watch.
Well, I would imagine there has to be some sort of powerful motivator for a young man to travel around looking for a woman. Hopefully, she wants to be found, despite the treasure hunt, or else this could have very easily been a horror film. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what were some of the other biggest differences that you found that maybe were bothersome to you, that you're like, I can't believe they left that out, that really made or break the story for you?
Another big thing I think is just how they developed the characters. I think in the book, John Green was able to go into more detail on the background of each character, why Margot wanted to leave, and why Quentin had this desire to go and find her. But in the movie, they kind of have to, again, like you said, cut some scenes, cut some of the detail in order to get through the whole movie. So I didn't see as much character development in the movie as I wanted to, but it still was a great film. It still represents the book.
Yeah, it did well. It had a small budget of only $12 million, which is pretty small for a modern movie these days. But worldwide, it ended up grossing over 85 million, so it was quite successful. So at the very least, I think those who maybe didn't know the book, which seems to be sometimes the case, even best-selling books, that no one, the movie comes out, it's a huge hit, and you had no idea that there was a book behind it. I think that was the case for some of John Green's material. What would you think of that?
I think so, yeah. Because he also had The Fault in Our Stars, which was also book to movie. And I didn't do a lot of research on, what exactly was not in the movie that was in the book. But I found the movie to be really like touching the heart and like seeing how much these two connected over something so tragic.
Same. And I bawled my, sorry for interrupting, but I bawled my eyes out like the very first time I saw the movie.
Oh, I did too.
So
Yeah, and it looks like so Paper Town has a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which I'm kind of surprised. Do you think the movie was better or worse than the book?
I think they're about the same because they both, especially since I lean towards like romantic movies and romantic books, I tend to follow those types of storylines. So it like hits closer to me because it's just something I like to enjoy. So I would say they're about the same.
Mm-hmm. And are you comparing it to Fault in Our Stars? Have you read that as well?
I have, yep.
And what would you say? Is that one did better as far as I think the film itself was possibly more successful? I have to look. But as a higher rating, that's a 7.7 out of 10. Which one came out first? Do you guys know?
I think it was Fault in Our Stars.
It was Fault in Our Stars
Fault
came
in Our
out
Stars.
first.
Okay.
And then it was Paper Towns.
Yep.
And I know for Looking for Alaska, that was turned into a television series,
Yep.
if memory serves me right.
Okay, that's another John Green.
Yeah.
Yep. And John Green has a brother, Hank Green,
Yes.
who's also
And-
an author.
Yeah, and except the biggest difference between both brothers is that one does more of the sci-fi side of things.
Hank Green
Yeah.
has his crash course on YouTube.
Yeah,
Where he
and
explains science.
yeah,
Yes. Yep, and I follow him on TikTok as well.
Yep.
And I first learned about John Green from his YouTube page, Mental Floss. Or maybe it wasn't his page, but he was a host of Mental Floss on YouTube, which was a list show of usually just fun, random facts. Sometimes they'd be themed or not. And that was a lot of fun. But Fault in Our Stars also did very well. Again, a budget of $12 million, but grossed over $300 million worldwide. So I hope, John Green, I hope you had a good paycheck out of this. And it did well.
and with this book released, Turtles All the Way Down, I don't think that one has been adapted just yet. But knowing how popular Fault in Our Stars and all his previous adaptations were previously, and from what I've heard, I wouldn't be surprised if his book Turtles All the Way Down was adapted to a movie because I think that was the most relatable, like to him personally, because knowing how he has mental illness personally with like OCD, I think, if memory serves me right, I wouldn't be surprised if that one was adapted and tried to have whatever mental illness was in that book.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Hopefully, there's nothing listed for him under IMDb because he's not usually in front of the camera in these. So hopefully there'll be more adaptations. They seem to be going well. But Charlotte, what's your favorite pick for better or for worse for film to movie adaptation? Or book to movie adaptation. You know what I meant.
Probably Everything. That's from the book was initially from Nicola Yoon.
Mm-hmm.
If memory serves me right with the plot, it pretty much has to do with this girl who pretty much has, unbeknownst to her at first, so absolute spoiler, but she pretty much has a condition where she pretty much can't leave her house, and she eventually falls in love with her next door neighbor, who she meets, and yeah.
Is this the one with Bella Thorne?
I don't think so.
Okay. There was one. I might be thinking of a different movie.
You're probably talking about the Deaf.
Midnight Sun from the audience. Thank you. And so who was the author of this again?
Nicola Yoon.
And so what did you like better, the book or the movie?
I probably both, because I think, like, although yes, there probably were some changes that I didn't really necessarily pay much attention to, but I think that the book did pretty good with getting whatever was in the book into the movie. So because there was this one scene where the two main characters pretty much went to Hawaii, and they mentioned that, and then she had to the main female character had to go to the emergency room because of her condition, essentially. So
Okay, so this is the film that came out in 2017, right? And so yeah, it says a teenager. This is how IMDb describes it: as a teenager who has spent her whole life confined to her home falls in love with the boy next door.
yes.
Okay, and yeah, again, kind of the same way along the lines of Paper Town, similar rating of 6.4. Are romances just not hits these days? Is that the sense?
I don't know. Personally, I love to watch romantic movies, even though they can sometimes make me cry. But I think now it's more like the horror is coming out. Is like
It's coming back. It's making a comeback.
Yeah.
It did well. It had a budget of $10 million. It grossed $61 million worldwide. So not a failure by any stretch of the imagination. But it seems like these are not the big blockbusters. I mean, The Notebook was probably the last big one that I can think of as far as a, book to movie adaptation, which then Nicholas Sparks, of course, got a lot of other films until they, petered out. But as far as, this one, what do you think stands out the most possibly to you, Charlotte, about the difference between the book and the film? Or did it follow pretty closely?
I think it followed it pretty closely. Like I may have to reread the book and rewatch the movie for the umpteenth time, but I think it followed it pretty closely. Mm-hmm. So.
And can you guys name maybe a film that you saw first and then went back and read the book?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. And Katrine, can you think of any that you watched the movie first and then went back and read the book?
Not off the top of my head,
okay.
No.
Yeah. For me, that was a lot. There's probably more films that I don't even know that there was a book that it was based on, unfortunately. But
actually, now that I think about it, there was this movie where Jack Black made an appearance, mm-hmm. And I think he was trying to take care of his nephew, and like something like that. I don't remember the name of the movie, but it was. But apparently he was like a magician or a wizard or something like that.
You're a wizard, Harry. Oh, that wasn't Harry Potter. No.
It definitely was not Harry Potter.
It was not Harry Potter. Although I feel like Jack Black playing Hagrid would have been very interesting.
Yes, that would have been.
Yeah, but I think Harry Potter is probably one of those ones that most people really did fall in love with the books first, and most people had read the books long before the films came out, and that there was probably the most popular book series when I was younger. Or not, I was probably in maybe middle school, high school, and the films started coming out. But the books were a big hit, and it was I think refreshing. I think people really gravitated to it because people are just so happy to see kids wanting to read, opposed to just going and seeing the movie. Of course, the movies have gone on to make millions upon millions. But yeah, well, I mean, it's you see these things through the lens of the author, and I think that's where again the adaptation to film often can change because it's almost like it's the same story, but it's a different author, if you will. It's a different producer, different person looking at it, different perspectives. I mean, look how many times they've done over Batman. Based on comics, same sort of thing.
And there's a new Batman out too.
There's another one coming out, or just came out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
and it came out.
Is it 3 hours long?
I think so.
Is
yeah.
3 hours. I can't sit for 3 hours. Do they give you an intermission like at plays? I feel like they should.
I don't know.
I haven't seen it, so I wouldn't know. But from what I've heard through TikTok, apparently the newest Batman with
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
I was about to say, what's his face from Twilight?
Still check that. We know who you're talking about.
Yep.
But I think that adaptation was based on like the animated TV series, but with it being more of the film noir.
Okay. Yep.
So
again, a different style. And it's
apparently, like, because I watched an interview through the Hot Ones interview, like that. Mm-hmm. Like that. And apparently with Colin Farrell, who played the Penguin in the movie. Apparently, he had like the first day of him doing all the special effects and whatnot in order for him to prep for the character. Like they had him go through like 3 to 4 hours at first, although they decreased the time eventually, like later on. Like all the like fat suits and like prosthetics and whatnot were like at first took like 3 to 4 hours for them to apply.
Wow.
So
I really wish they had just brought back Danny DeVito. I mean,
He's a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
who doesn't love Danny DeVito? And
Yes.
I think his Penguin character, I think, was very underrated because that was a Tim Burton one. But he played that character very, very well. And it's probably one of the few characters, from that Tim Burton adaptation that really would have thrived in other Batman movies that were more modern. I think it could have it would have been good.
Who knows? Knowing how Michael Keaton is coming back, and I think 2 adaptations of like one of them being like Batgirl, if memory serves me right, and the other one being in the Flashpoint movie that's going to eventually come out. I think I would not be surprised if Danny DeVito's version of Penguin came back.
Yeah, I looked up. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he has anything on his IMDb for upcoming projects just yet. But I'm seeing here there's one film called Little Demon. He plays Satan. And I know nothing about that, but just based on the title and that Danny DeVito's playing Satan, I may have to go see that. But going back to our theme, so I think for me, there's 2 that are probably big blockbuster hits, but were also best-selling films, which would be Jurassic Park and then Jaws. So Jurassic Park, it's Michael Crichton. So that one, the book is so much longer. It definitely goes far more in depth. There's more characters, and there's a lot more build-up. The original Jurassic Park film kind of starts almost halfway through the novel. And then Jurassic Park 2, the film, is actually really more based on the first part of the novel, where it starts with there's a girl on the island, but then it goes into there's a whole village that's being harassed, and there's kind of this legendary creature, which is really these small dinosaurs that are snatching babies, and it's really interesting because and again, it's one that I watched Jurassic Park that came out when I was in elementary school, so I had no business reading novels of that size or length. And then so that's definitely one that there was some really interesting scenes in the book that I feel like if they had adapted it to the movie would have made it more interesting. One of them is instead of the lawyer does not get eaten on the toilet like it does in the movie, but there's 2 other people that are actually watching it from afar. This guy is walking down the road trying to get back to other people, and then comes across a dinosaur, and then he's no more. And then there's another one which would have been Laura Dern's character. She's on the roof, and they're chasing her through the building, and they do that a little bit, right, through the kitchen with the kids and all of that. But I think it's one where they're both pretty equal as far as enjoyment factor. I mean, the book was really ahead of its time in concepts with genetics and cloning and the implications, the morality of it all, and they of course touch on that. In the film, but not as in depth. But that's where the Jurassic World seems to be doing a good job of relating back to the initial novel, which is talking about the concepts of, just because you can, should we, is this right, is this wrong, where do we draw the line? So I do like that the newer films have drawn back to that.
Apparently, like the newest Jurassic World, like Dominion, I think.
Dominion, yeah, that one's coming out this summer, I think this summer.
But apparently, according to like the trailers and whatnot, Sam O'Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum, I think.
Jeff Goldblum, yeah, they're all coming back. And for what I have read, and it's not really a spoiler, but so you have the classic characters, if you will, and then you have the new characters with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. Their stories are going to kind of start off separately, and then I think merge at some point in the film. And I think it could just be, hopefully, just as awesome as I really want it to be.
Kind of like Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Kind of like Ghostbusters Afterlife, yes.
Sorry, I had to just bring that up.
Yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife was a phenomenal film. It had a great throwback, and I think it left the door open enough. I wish, to me, it felt like a little bit of a rehash, kind of like the way The Force Awakens was for back to the original Star Wars. But it was, I kind of wish that there was a different villain, but I understand how they used that to connect the two. And then, of course, the spoiler, the ghost of Egon Spangler. For anyone who grew up with Ghostbusters, if you didn't get choked up a little bit at that, stuff. Yeah.
I thought that was the coolest scene. And when I first initially saw it, I was like, "May the guy rest in peace."
Yeah, it was wonderful. And then, Ghostbusters is definitely in my top 5 favorite films. My favorite overall, though, is Jaws. If you guys know, it's an older film for you kids. It came out, I think, in 78 or 73. It's an older film. Have you guys at least seen Jaws?
Yes,
I have.
Yeah. That's one that I think still to this day, you could sit down and watch it and be very entertained. Because, there's no CGI. There's parts of the film that always bugged me, even when I was a kid, is that to make up for some of the shots underwater, they used real footage of underwater great white sharks, which drove me crazy, but they didn't have a choice. Without going too much into it, the shark was always broken. The mechanics didn't work well in salt water. It went way over budget. Spielberg almost got fired, but made an absolute masterpiece of a film. But the book had a lot of other different themes into it. Robert Dreyfuss, Dreyfuss's character, he had a whole affair with Martin Brody's wife that comes into this, which is when he gets eaten. In the movie he lives, in the film he doesn't, and Brody's kind of like, well, he got what he deserved. So it's really just very different. And then, of course, so I'm assuming you guys haven't read the book.
I have not, but I've seen all the movies with my dad.
Yep. So Peter Benchley's Jaws was a best-selling book, and I'm going to spoil it. So, of course, in the movie, how does the shark die?
I don't remember.
He gets blown up, right? Smile, you son of a, and right at the air compressed tank, and blows up, and right, he goes over. So in the book, not nearly that cool. It's actually it's almost disappointing. So it goes into the concept of spearing fish and harpooning, which was how Quentin, and that's actually still a method for hunting tuna, and in some areas whales these days. And in the film, so they're stabbing it, they're jabbing at it, they're doing everything they can to kill this shark. Of course, then the boat sinks. They're sinking, and then Brody's in the water, and he's already eaten Quint, and the shark's coming at him. And then it just stops, and it dies.
Yep.
And as he's being prepared to be eaten, it just stops, and then it just dies, and that's the end of it. And I said, "Oh my God! Thank God they didn't do that in the movie. How terrible of an ending! There was such a build up, and it's like, oh my God!" And then, yeah. So I think Spielberg made the right decision. I believe Peter Benchley was not thrilled that he had made that change. I'm sure after he got the paychecks when it was a hit, he was fine with it. And then, little known fact, Peter Benchley actually makes an appearance in the film Jaws, and he plays the news reporter who's on the beach, who has a little 10-second statement and is doing a little report, at which people have no idea because no one knows what these authors ever look like.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like how, since you bring that up, it's pretty much the same thing when Stan Lee was around.
Very much so, yes.
Because, Like for
Oh,
like
he was in everything.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
and he makes an appearance in every film, and I think they've tried really hard to include him in some way since. Although, was there a cameo in the latest Spider-Man?
I don't think so.
No.
I still haven't seen the new Spider-Man, so I can't tell you.
Oh, I think maybe the license plate. There was a license plate that like referenced his birthday or something. I could be wrong. I gotta say.
I think every MCU movie, or I may have not paid much attention to it because who does that? But I think in most MCU movies, there's always some form of reference to like the comic books, like especially in the license
Yes.
plate.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Hopefully they did. I mean, I feel like if there's like a cafe scene or something, there could be like a little picture of him on the wall. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe they think that might ruin it. Being immersed into a different universe. But
But he's
I like
always
those
been
things.
in the Marvel
Yeah,
movies.
I know. You can't miss it, and it's we
yeah,
miss Stanley.
I just honestly, I just know when I saw the newest Spider-Man movie, I just felt old during the whole movie.
Yeah, so which Spider-Man did you grow up with, if you will?
McGuire.
McGuire. Okay, yeah. So that was the same with me. And of course, those didn't come out. I was in high school, college age.
I was like in elementary school at the time.
Yeah. But that was the only Spider-Man I knew because there wasn't anything
Yeah,
before that.
I know that there was a lot of like animated TV series that either was about him or had mentioned him in some, or Spider-Man in some way, shape, or form. But
Yeah, there was no Spider-Man. For me, when I was a kid, there was Batman. Obviously, the Tim Burton,
Yeah.
the Michael Keatons, the George Clooney, and then there was the animated TV shows, of
Yeah,
which to
and-
bring it all back together, Mark Hamill. Of course, known for his Luke Skywalker from Star Wars, voice
and-
actor of the Joker.
and I think anything James Bond was adapted was some form of book to movie adaptation. Don't quote
Yes.
me on that.
Yep, yes, I believe those were. I forget the author of those, but yes, that was originally.
I think it was Ian Fleming.
That maybe I have to look that up. But isn't it? It's sad in a way that these people who create, with the exception, some of the exception, obviously Hank Green, who was known for other things, before his book, and then of course the films, and then you have Stan Lee, who, because there wasn't really many other people writing comic books, and he created all these very specific characters. But how many of these authors, people go and watch the movie, and then Steven Spielberg gets the credit for it, and you don't even know who really wrote these stories. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah, I kind of like what I was saying earlier with the Jack Black book to movie adaptation, where I think at some point in the movie that they brought up like doves, and I don't know if that and I didn't until the very beginning of the movie I didn't realize that, oh yeah, this book was adapted. This movie was adapted from a book. I had no clue.
Yeah, no, and it's I think if I was an author, it would be brutal to me. To watch my work come to life, and then really all these other people are getting credit for it. Although I feel like perhaps these days they try to give more credit at the movie premieres to the authors than perhaps they ever did before.
Yeah, I think it was like the clock on the wall or something like that.
Yep.
I don't quote me on that.
So do we have any other books to film that... Can we talk about any that were terrible? Were there any that you absolutely were like, oh my God, they destroyed this book?
I haven't, by this point, I haven't read any of the, kind of like what I was saying earlier, I have not, when you were asking what movies we haven't, to the book to movie adaptations we've seen before we watched read the books and whatnot, I'd watched Mockingjay Part 1, hated that movie.
A lot of people said they did not like the Hunger Games, and actually, I know several people when Twilight came out
They were
not
mad
happy
about the Twilight, yeah.
because they changed some major attributes of characters.
Yep.
I remember
I remember
person
hearing about that too.
that the author had pointed out. One of the characters had the very particular color piercing eyes, and had really made a point to point it out, and then I think it was whoever played Bellows. It's oh gosh.
Bella was, I think, Kristen.
Yeah, I think it was yeah, it
Kristen
was
Stewart?
Yeah,
Kristen Stewart.
yeah.
And I think the character had very specific color eyes, and this obviously like they couldn't even give her colored contacts.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
and I think that really then upset a lot. Like, those little things that authors try to point out for whatever reason, and then they
Yeah, I just know when I saw Mockingjay Part 1, I couldn't watch Part 2 because I hated how much. Of course, it was probably the way that it was written in the book, but I hated how realistic PETA was at one point in the movie. Because he was so excruciatingly skinny at one point in the movie. I'm just like, okay, I hate this. I'm not watching Part 2. Go away. Fight me.
I think that happened in also, like, this is a TV show, but the Vampire Diaries. The book series, they detailed some of the characters with, like, blonde or, like, red hair. But in the books, or in the, like, TV shows, they had brown or black hair. So, like, they changed I can't remember if that was the only thing, but they changed how the character looked. And I was like,
well, and along those same sort of things, so you have in that. It seems like if you are lucky enough to be an author that has a book series, it's going to get made into a movie at some point. And
or TV show.
Or TV show, which has become, you look at Game of Thrones.
Yep.
And then people were very upset with the last, season and a half, 2 seasons, because the books weren't done yet.
Yeah.
So they're like, the writers are like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're just going to wing it. And I'll be curious to see if and when, I don't know if that novel series has been actually finished, if they go back and remake the final season. But, and then Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Martin, he did, was it Tolkien did Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
And then J.R.R. Martin was Game of Thrones.
Yep.
Yes. So, the people who were longtime devoted fans of those were really devoted to the way the book was.
Yeah, I know that they're doing. I know that. I think Outlander by Diana Gabaldon, if memory serves me right. What was all? I think it still is currently in production, but I know because one of my aunts actually had read the. I think she had read the books, or at least if not, or at least whatever ones are being published, so far. But yeah, and I think that's a TV series as well. Don't quote me on that.
I think there was also issue with the Divergent series.
I haven't seen the Divergent film, I haven't seen the movies yet, but I am highly interested.
I watched all the movies. I didn't read the books. I just couldn't. I don't know. Couldn't actually get into that sort of book and just sit and read about it. But I watched the movies. But I've heard some things that there are minor changes, but not. Can't remember if it's huge changes as well. But
If memory serves me right, I think one of the characters had more not tattoos, more, because I think in the Dauntless area, I think you can get God knows how many tattoos that you want, God knows how many piercings that you want, and I think Jai Courtney's character, who played one of the villains in the movie, or at least for the first couple of movies, I think in the book he had a lot more piercings. I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but yeah, it's been a little bit since I've read the book. Can you tell?
I've never read the Divergent series, but I've watched the movies just for fun because I've heard from some people that they were good and that they were bad. So I was like, I'll just watch them and see. I personally liked it because of one of the actors. I can't pronounce her name, but she was on another TV show that I watched.
Shailene Woodley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was also in The Fault in Our Stars as well.
She was, yep.
She's very well known to be in those type of, because I think she was in the TV adaptation for Big Little Lies as well. At one point,
I don't know if she was in that one, but she was in The Secret Life of an American Teenager.
Yeah,
I've seen her in that, and I like her as an actor or actress, so I tend to follow her movies and see how she takes on different characters.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, I think that's going to wrap us up here for the Moosecast, talking about our best and worst favorite book to movie adaptations. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and happy watching and reading.